Now we'll cover page layout and design. Basically, we're going to be working with tables. These tools will give you the flexibility to easily do almost anything you want with your page layout. By default, any new page created looks like this. Here we have a simple layout table with 2 cells. Now we can go down here and just start typing more content. So we see that we only have one table on the page, and below it we have this empty section. Now if we place our caret down here, we can start typing. But we don't want that. You should never add content unless it's inside a table. Otherwise, you have no design control over it. So let's delete this and add a table. Now if you notice, because I'm outside of any table, the drop-down options are all grayed out, except for the 2 that allow us to insert a table. Now we're going to work with the first one. So let's click Insert New Layout Table. And there it is. And we want to fill it with content, so let's just copy and paste the paragraph up here. Now you're probably wondering why I would need it in a separate table. Well, let's just assume that this paragraph covers a different aspect than the one above. In fact, let's just add some titles. Since it's on the same page, the main topic will be the same, but the info can be separated into different sections visually. Let's go ahead and click on this table down here. And we're going to edit table properties. Here you have quite a few options, so let's go over them. The first is alignment. You can ignore this for now because our table is an outer table, meaning that it's not inside of another table. We'll get to that shortly. The next 2 items are for border. I personally don't like borders because they just add too much busyness to the page. But if you wanted, you can click to activate the color picker and choose a color. You can even change the border thickness if you wanted. And if you want to remove the border, you just click on this X. You can also change the background color. Now on this color picker, we have a color palette. The first 4 colors are the preset ones from our template designer. The next 2 are preset opaque black and white. And the other 6 are your palette history. And the palette history for your tables is different than the palette history for your font colors. And we'll click this one. The CSS ID is for setting custom CSS styles or to give the table a name so you can use it as an anchor. You can also select a background image, and we'll come back to that. You can set a radius to round the corners, but again, you wouldn't do that for an outer table. Cell padding and cell spacing. I'm going to change this to 10 so I can show you what it looks like on the page. Width is set to 100% because we want the table to always fill the entire width of the browser. And height we can leave blank because it will automatically resize based on content. And down here it shows any settings that have been applied. This is more for people that understand coding. So let's go ahead and click Update. Let's turn off the editor. And as we look at the page, the different sections are separated by background color, which helps to break up all the text. Now let's put the page back in edit mode. Okay, cell spacing is the distance between cells and the outer edge of the table. So we have 40 pixels all around this cell. And up here, you see that there is also 40 pixels between each cell. Now, cell padding is the distance between the border of the cell and its content. Remember we set this one to 10 pixels? Meanwhile, the one above is at the default setting of just 1 pixel. So why would you need cell padding? Well, let's say you wanted to change the background of just the table cell rather than the whole table. Let's try it. We'll click inside this cell, and now we're going to click Edit Cell Properties. And here we have some of the same settings, but we also have vertical align. By default, it's set to top, and I'll show you what that means shortly. You also have a padding setting. This is the same as cell padding, except this only applies to this cell, whereas the cell padding setting for the tables applies to all the cells in the table. And padding here overrides any cell padding for the entire table. So let's go ahead and set the background color. We'll also give it a border radius. Let's give it a padding of 20 pixels. And down here, we can decide whether we want all these settings applied to just this cell or all the cells in the table. For now, we'll just do current cell only. We click Update, and now you can see the difference between styling the entire table or just the cell. And since this is a dark background, let's go ahead and use some light text. There we go. That looks much better, doesn't it? So with the table properties and cell properties, we can really make our site look nice and professional and break up text so it's not so boring. Okay, let's cover a few more options. Let's go ahead and insert column after. And you see it added another row of cells after the cell where my caret is. We can also do insert column before. Let's put some text in these cells. If you notice, the cells act like a grid. If one cell has a lot of content and stretches the height of the cell, all the cells next to it stretch right along with it. Now remember how we had vertical align set to top? That means that if the cell is taller than the content will align to the top of the cell. Let's go ahead and change that to see what it looks like. This one will set to middle. And you see it's now vertically aligned in the middle of the cell. This one will do bottom. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Now I want you to also notice that as I type, the cells expand and contract based on content. If you want the cells to have a set width, you can do that. Since we have 3 cells, let's go ahead and make them all equal. And you can set this as a percentage or an actual pixel width. So if I wanted one cell to be exactly 400 pixels wide, I would set it to 400 pixels, and then the other 2 or 3 or however many else are on there will automatically adjust. And let's change the vertical alignment back to top. And this time, let's go ahead and apply to all cells in table. And there you have it, they are all equal width. And check this out. If I click and drag across these 3 cells and highlight them, I can click Merge Table Cells, and it combines them into one. Let's set the alignment back to center. So you can do a lot with tables. And now we'll cover these 3. But first, let's go down to this table. Click to select it, edit table properties, and now we're going to add a background image. Select image. We'll select this one since it's the only image we have right now. And you see the file path to that image in this box. And this double arrow will set the image to auto stretch and fill the table from side to side. And when it's active, it turns purple. Now let's remove the background color by clicking the X, click Update, and now that image is the background for our table. But the text is now hard to see, so let's fix that. We'll click inside here, go to Edit Cell Properties, set the background color to an opaque white, and add some more padding. Let's do 20 pixels, a border radius, and update. And look how nice that is. Now this method of using a background image is simple, but it has some particulars. The table height will auto-expand based on content, as it normally would, so if you don't have a lot of content, you only see a portion of the image. And as you add content, you see more of the image. Also, if you want your content to have more than one cell, the background gets separated too. And if this is what you want, then that's perfect. Now let's go ahead and add a new table. We'll click to place our caret at the bottom, insert new layout table, and I'm just going to set the background color for this one so it's easy to see. There we go. And I'm going to shorten this one up a bit. And now I'm going to insert another table. And this time I'm going to use Insert Table with Background Image. Okay, let me explain to you what this did. It placed a table on the page that has no cell padding and no cell spacing, and it inserted an image into that table as content. Remember, table cells auto-expand according to content. So now, this table is the height of the image because the image is placed in there as content and not as a background image. This way, we always see the entire image without it being cut off, regardless of how much text there is. It also placed another table within that table, floating above the image. The reason this is possible is because the inner table has its position set to absolute, which allows it to ignore all the other content, the image for example, and float wherever it's set to. And this floating inner table has the standard cell padding of 40 pixels, and it has an opaque white background. Now this is just the default, and you can change it to whatever you want. And as we type, the table expands, but the outer table is unaffected. Okay, let's check out the settings for this inner table. You see the width is set to 90%, and that leaves us with 10% to account for, which means 5% on each side. And when you look at the style code, you see it's aligned 5% from the left. We also have it aligned 10% from the top, but we can change that if we want to center it a little bit better. Let's go ahead and change the background color too. Let's use one of our preset colors for consistency. And we'll adjust it to make it opaque. And 0.85, which basically means 85%, is the perfect opacity for easy reading of text. Update. Now let's change the font color. And there we have it. Now let's add another column. Fill it with some text. And as you can see, we have one background area for multiple columns, whereas up here, we had separate backgrounds for the columns. So depending on how you want it to look, you have two different ways of going about it. I think the second option is best for your header because it gives you more flexibility. So the default header you have is already set up this way, but you can change it if you like. Okay, last thing. Let's say we have a bunch of tables on our page, and we decide we want to rearrange them. No problem. Just click the one you want to move. We'll go up here. Move table down. We can also move it back up. And we can move it up some more. It's that simple. But what about the inner table? Well, if we click on the outer table, it obviously moves the whole thing, including the inner table. But if we click on the inner table, it moves just the inner table to the next outer table. And you really don't want to do that because the floating inner table is not recognized as content, so the outer table does not expand to fit it. So let's move it back. And again, here it fits fine because we have a nice large table because of the image in there. So that's basically it for page layout and design. Now we really can't cover every possibility, so just play around with it and see what works best for you.